We're just trying to accelerate what the best leaders have been doing for generations, really. So I think we're only scratching the surface, I think, of the power of employee listening. But imagine if you can give better insight on a wider set of topics like the C-suite. Imagine if you could give feedback to your marketing team if you run a retail business and you're able to give really meaningful, specific feedback, actionable to the merchandising team if they've rolled out new store merchandising.
Welcome to another Employee Experience Labs podcast from the Munich Podcast Studios. Employee Experience podcasts are about HR tech, employee experience, shared service, and other important topics around HR at the workplace. After our prediction season, I'm now focused on a new, interesting and exciting topic, exploring and making known interesting startups or young firms that have a fabulous idea or product. Firms that are not necessarily easily to be found or the natural go-tos when you're searching for a solution. Sometimes it is even an idea to solve an issue you didn't know you are having. We are starting the new season today with a great conversation I had with Steve about his company Workbuzz. The topic that Steve and I talk about is very close to my heart, and so you will see how excited I am. And of course how passionate Steve is about his firm. We talk about employee engagement, but not only. We also talk about the wider ideas and opportunities of the overall employee listening complex, with ideas that I haven't heard before. Before we go there, though, we will start with a quick intro of Steve and how he got to found Workbuzz. For now, let's go and enjoy the next 40 minutes. Stephen, hey, it's so great to see you again. It has been a while, and we only had one meeting so far, but I'm really excited to talk to you today because you're involved in one of my most favorite topics, employee engagement, employee experience. And I think there's a very interesting story behind you and behind a company called Workbuzz that I would like to explore with you today. Welcome.
Well, thank you. I've been really looking forward to being here and very excited for the podcast. So thank you very much for having me.
No, of course, Stephen. Before we get into the weeds and into the details, tell us a bit about yourself. Who is Steve? Where are you coming from? What is your kind of educational background? What is your work history? Tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure. So I founded Workbuzz. And we launched Workbuzz as a brand and platform almost 6 years ago, October 2018. I can remember it very, very well. And whenever you found a business, I think the founder story is normally intertwines with the business itself, so that this begins to merge together. I'm on that. So maybe I can talk about sort of my journey and what got me to where I am today. And that sort of will give a basis for Workbuzz.
That was brilliant. Yeah.
So I'm based in the Milton Keynes. I'm based in the UK in a small city called Milton Keynes, just north of London.
Isn't this also where all the Formula One companies are?
Yes, yeah. So you have Silverstone, which was an airfield, small village these days, but has this ginormous sort of racetrack and all that infrastructure. And because of that, you've got an amazing collection of Formula One cars. So in Milton Keynes, we've got Red Bull Racing. Quite an impressive setup. You can go for a factory tour. I went to an event there last year, and we got to go on the racing simulators. I worked out very quickly. I've got no chance of ever making it into a professional racing driver. I spent more time off the track than sort of on the track. So we're very lucky to have Red Bull Racing here. And then just a little bit further to the west in a small town called Brackley is Mercedes. So you have this collection of two giant Formula One teams, really because of Silverstone and that history of Formula One going back to the 1950s and 60s.
But sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's absolutely fine. So Milton Keynes has claim to fame in terms of you've got Red Bull Racing here and Mercedes just down the road. It's one of the cities in the UK, one of the only cities that's built on American grid system. The city was created sort of maybe 50 years ago, give or take, to create more space when people relocated from London. So they designed the city from scratch, and it feels a bit like a US city. It has a grid system. Doesn't have much history as other parts of the UK, but very efficient when you drive around because of the grid system, and has these concrete cows. So there's sort of a few things that sort of makes Milton Keynes sort of famous in the UK. But we do have some racing teams in the city or nearby.
Yeah.
And my story, after university, I went to work for a bank.
Mm-hmm.
One of the least entrepreneurial things I could do. But at that bank, we were looking at could we franchise bank branches? And that introduced me to the world of franchising. And I thought, at least in the UK, I thought franchising means your big fast food brands, your McDonald's and so on. But actually some really eclectic brands that franchise in telecoms, in opticians. And I thought there was an opportunity to disrupt UK franchising to start with. And the idea was, what would happen if you created something like Trustpilot or TripAdvisor for franchising? So we could go out and get feedback from, say, franchise owners of a brand like McDonald's. Use that data and insight to help them to benchmark and engage their franchise owners. And then use that feedback across the industry to recognize the best franchise opportunities. That was the vision of my first business.
Great idea.
And that was blood, sweat and tears to begin with, that we created something really proud of, and where today that program still runs, and we have nearly all of the big franchise brands in the UK take part. So McDonald's, Domino's Pizza, Vodafone. We have Lloyds Bank, one of the big brands, and one of the big banks in the UK, sponsor that program. And really, and that was my intro into employee satisfaction or engagement experience. About a decade ago, we had some of our clients say the insight is amazing, really helping us to engage our franchise owners and align our business plan to what's going to really move the needle, rather than just a franchisee that's the most vocal. But so can you also help us with an employee satisfaction survey? And I can remember the first meeting I had was with a law firm, and we were expecting to go and talk about how we would approach it and the benefits of employee listening. And instead, their manager partner wanted to dive into design and the questions there and then, and caught me off the hop. And so that was my introduction.
Let's go into the weeds.
That's how I first come across in the industry, which I've grown to love. I have such a huge passion. The employees are closer to your customers, have the answers, and it's about trying to create a vehicle for them. They generally have a voice, and you can use that to create great place to work and empower them. So that was my introduction initially. I then grew that consultancy business. We had a team of about 10. And then back in 2017, I felt like we could do something on a bigger scale. And wanted to create a platform-led business. And went out to an old client of mine called Trevor and Sam Brocklebank, as in the wide team. They built a home care business to about 10,000 employees, so a significant business. And Trevor had always said to me, if ever I was looking for funding, let him know. We did a deal in his back garden to become a board, first angel investor.
Very nice.
And fast forward now, we've raised about $11-12 million in total. Exchange rates as the vary bits, and a little bit different to working with professional institutional investors and VCs compared to that first angel investor. But sort of it's been really, really good fun.
Amazing.
And I'm really passionate about what we're creating in the space. So I've been really looking forward to being part of this podcast. So thank you for the opportunity, Volker.
That's amazing, Stephen. That's really amazing. It's quite a sizable amount of money. It's quite a sizable amount of investment. So it's great. So let's dive in there. So we founded Workbuzz in 2018.
That's right.
And we already understand how you got there, how you got into that space, and it's really also my pet peeve. Engagement experience is one of the big things. Talking about Workbuzz then to someone who doesn't know it, what's the elevator pitch of Workbuzz in 5 minutes?
Sure. So I think everyone on this podcast will understand the power of listening to employees. And I think over the last sort of decade or 20 years, I stand on the shoulders of people who have helped lead that movement in terms of you can't have and be serious about delivering a great client experience unless your employees are engaged and want to go the extra mile. And we see all around us, almost every industry our clients are in, they have talent shortages.
Yeah.
And that's not going away. Throughout Western Europe or the US, those sort of themes there, the macro trends and aging population too. So I think around the board table, stakeholders outside of HR get the importance of engaging employees and creating great experience because of those talent shortages.
Yeah.
What Workbuzz does, we are a little bit different. There are some really great platforms out there.
Yeah, there are many. As you said, right? The space is grown exponentially in the last 10 or 12 years, something like this. Yeah. And you have many platforms looking into this and in telling that story. What is it that makes Workbuzz different?
Yes, so yes, there's some great platforms out there. And what makes Workbuzz a little bit different is most of those platforms are optimized for people like me and you, Volker, that have the luxury. We can jump on a call like this. We can work remotely. We can work in an office or work from home or work hybrids. And we probably care about things like integrations with Microsoft Teams or Slack for notifications and so on.
Yeah.
But imagine you work in a factory.
Mm-hmm.
That isn't really relevant for you in terms of if we're trying to get your feedback via Slack. You're not on Slack to begin with. You want to give feedback in different ways. The types of questions that are relevant for you are different from hybrid working and around that. So what we play into, which is a really interesting disconnect, which is roughly 80% of the world's workforce doesn't work behind a desk.
Yeah.
They're in construction, they're in manufacturing, in healthcare, they're in hospitality.
Sales, what have you, yeah.
100%. So most of the world's workforce doesn't work on a desk.
Yeah.
But the vast majority of venture capital funding, almost 98-99%, goes to companies building software. The people that do work behind a desk. So 80% they work behind a desk. Only 1 or 2% of venture funding goes towards companies building products for their needs. So that's something which we've sort of optimized for. So we are building the world's best employee listening platform for deskless workers, for frontline workers, with prioritizing integrations, not for things like Slack and Teams, but integrations on the apps they're already using, having extra flexibility. So you're able to get feedback across the employee lifecycle, but in a way which is optimized for your sort of frontline workers, making sure the dashboards, the actions that the platform suggests using AI are optimized for a phone rather than a desktop device. Yeah. So that's sort of that's our take. That's our unique bit of difference, really trying to build the world's best employee listening platform that comes with deskless workers.
And how do you do this? How do you reach deskless workers, right? And what my experience is, it's difficult to engage them because it's difficult to communicate to them. You can't just send them an email. You have to find different ways to communicate to them, and then getting them to utilize a digital device is also difficult. So what's your approach there? How do you get them in?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So it's not easy and it's multi-channel. And what works for one client may not work for another. They've got different resources that we can tap into and a different tech stack. So if I was to go back in time when we first started and with my previous consultants business before Workbuzz, it would be paper surveys. It would be SMS text. It would be clunky. And what that meant is you tended to have this sort of annual census type survey every 2 years. And what we know, and COVID sort of taught us this, is the business is changing fast than ever before. So the idea of listening every 2 years doesn't work. It's out of date so quickly.
And you cannot break this information down, right? Then when you have paper surveys, you basically say like, okay, all right, I have all paper surveys from this one location. Maybe there are, 4,000 people working in that location, and you cannot make a differentiation between functions or between levels because you don't have any other demographic information on that. Right?
Or you end up with a survey which is 150,000 questions because it's got all the demographics at the end. Worried about sort of I'm the only female with this age bracket in this team. Sort of so it just becomes unworkable.
Yeah.
And what you need is a more agile solution so you can listen across the employee lifecycle. We know lots of our clients, if I take hospitality or care, they have a huge spike in turnover in the first quarter or so. So it's really, really important when we think about optimizing that initial employee experience and drive retention to get feedback from new starters. How do we compare to expectations? Were they really welcomed? Did they feel like the manager was prepared for them? Were they aware of their shift patterns from day one and around that? Did they have the best experience? And if we deliver that, that leads to retention. You can't do that if you've got a really clunky way of getting feedback. So when we built the first version of Workbuzz, we've iterated the platform over time. What our clients told us what was really important was flexibility. So what that really meant from them wasn't just questions and how often they listen and how listen throughout the employee lifecycle, but was flexibility in terms of how to reach their frontline workers. So we have some clients where it could be there's a QR code, there's a short link, which could be ABC company survey. I can scan the QR code, pull in the short link. I can pull in my employee number, some information I will remember. That takes me straight into an optimized version of the survey for me. So if I'm a new starter, it knows that will ask me questions about my onboarding experience. If, for example, I'm in a team that's sort of refurbished their location, moved locations, I can get a couple of additional questions about my new working environment around that too. We've a big fan of trying to reach employees where they already are. So our clients have helped shape this thinking. Originally, we were looking at, do we build an app for Workbuzz? But the average employee interacts with 13
don't want to download.
They don't want to download. I think the average employee uses 13 different bits of software a day. So if Workbuzz was an app for everything, where I get my payroll information from my pay slips, employee comms, reward and recognition, my shift patterns, that sort of works. But as an employee, I don't want to download 13 apps on my personal phone around that. And then you have big challenges in terms of how to market the app and get take-up. And we've seen from some of our clients trying to adapt these for surveys, they may only ever get an uptake of 60, 70%. So straight away, you're only getting feedback from 2/3 of your workforce. And particularly new starters, it's harder to get those to embrace those changes to begin with. So we go to where employees are already at. So if an employee is already using an app, normally we can distribute our service through them. If it's a benefits platform or a comms platform they're already using to read communications or access their pay slips, we can have a notification or pop up on that on the app too.
Just with a link and then it gets you there.
We've seen for a recent client we did that for the first time. They had a 15% improvement in response rates. Compared to SMS text, compared to QR codes. So it's just a multi-channel approach and trying to reach employees on the channels we're already using, the tools we're already using for that last mile.
That's amazing. But this is just, one part of it, right? One part is you need to get the information in. But at the same time, for particularly the frontline workers, they often have frontline managers as well. So how do you make sure that the results reach the right managers so they can understand and take action on this?
So in terms of insight for managers, we have a test, which we have a certain persona. And this persona is one of our clients that owns and runs one of the biggest bakery chains in the UK.
Okay.
And I'm always saying to our product team, how would that work? If I'm a shift manager doing the night shifts on their front line in one of their bakeries, how does it work for me? And around that. And how do we make sure we have just been rolling out the next generation of our action planning tool and how Workbuzz uses AI and algorithms to suggest where to focus on, has bite-sized content. That content needs to work on another device without scrolling. It needs to be plain English. It needs to be sort of, for an English-speaking sort of client, it needs to be plain English on that point. But it needs to be really optimized for a shift manager at that bakery chain. And if someone is a bit more motivated or has more time and wants to learn more about the science behind employee engagement or sort of short courses around how to give feedback, as extra resources they can tap into. But by and large, it's really specific suggested actions off that are relevant for working in an organisation with blue collar or frontline workers. So that's really, really important for us. The whole experience, not just from making Workbuzz more accessible for frontline workers, but the whole flow of making sure the services are accessible in terms of the employees with visual impairments and so on, all the way through to making sure
the action taken,
the insight and suggestions and actions for managers are really accessible, so that it's their kind of language. It's not optimized for HR directors. It's optimized the front line
and engages them therefore easier and better.
Yes.
That's fantastic. I really, really like this concept because, as you said, it is an untapped territory. The colleagues that we have on the front line, may it be, in manufacturing or many other jobs. And your persona is really, it might be a bakery, but in the end, it can be any, retail store. It can be a manufacturing facility. It can be applicable to any of those because they have the same kind of challenges. But have you been able already to see a difference with your more focused approach on the ROI compared to other ways of approaching particularly this kind of workforce?
So I think there's a basket of measures. There are some products, measures, metrics we track in terms of response rate. And I mentioned that example of a client. It was literally 2 weeks ago, 50% uplift in response rate.
Yeah, that's great.
We saw engagement improve too, as we were able to reach a bigger audience and feel sort of like they had a voice. This isn't rocket science. If you listen, feed it back, take action, you sort of drive engagement just going through that process. In terms of the wider piece, as we try to, I'm a great believer of every organization is unique, but has some similarities too. But the needs for organizations with deskless workers are slightly different. So what we've tried to really do is optimize our product for their needs. And that leads to better response rates, better engagements, and better change off the back of it. And we have a client advisory boards, some of our biggest clients. We meet up sort of fairly regularly. We share with them our product roadmap, get their feedback. We're not smart enough to come up with all the best ideas. We want to co-create the future of our clients, align work as their biggest challenges. And that also helps from an ROI perspective. So I think most of your audience, I'm sure, will be looking at the link between improving engagement and retention. Saving money on recruitment. But I think it's a much broader sort of the remit. And this is something which we're working to at the moment, which is how do you add benefit to the wider C-suites? So if you think about employee listening, that is a cornerstone of engaged employees, so they go the extra mile and stay. We've all read about the service profit chain and so on. But imagine if you can give better insight on a wider set of topics to the whole C-suite. So imagine if you were using employee feedback and employee listening to identify health and safety risks before they translate into injuries or near misses. Imagine if you could give feedback to your marketing team, if you run a retail business, and you're able to give really meaningful, specific feedback, actionable, to the merchandising team if they've rolled out new store merchandising. So I think we're only scratching the surface. I think the power of employee listening.
So you go much deeper than just engagement. Deeper, you go very specific. That's amazing. I haven't seen that before.
So that's part of our vision. I think if you, I'm really passionate about, particularly as organizations get larger, your executive team are more and more removed from the coal face. And I think the best leaders I've worked with will walk the shop floor. will listen to employees and they want to listen.
Yeah.
That's difficult to do at scale.
Yeah.
Employees have those ideas. They're closest to your customers. They're closest to the bottlenecks on your manufacturing assembly line.
Yeah.
So being able to find a way to surface those insights in a really actionable, specific way is what we're trying to do at Workbuzz.
So you can basically run multiple different campaigns. You can run engagement campaigns. You can run, hey, how is the marketing landing campaigns?
Yes.
Campaigns around HS&E. That's great. Yeah.
Any topic, any part of the workforce, anytime, all in real time.
So you can also then very specifically segment where you roll it out to.
Yes. So if you wanted to, if in that example you were a retailer and you'd roll out a new store design as a pilot, you could get feedback just on those stores that are taking part in real time, get that action, that learning really, really quickly. So I think we're just trying to accelerate what the best leaders have been doing for generations, really.
Yeah. And now really the complexity of organizations and structures and also geography, locations gets absolutely in the way. I hear you. This is amazing. And the power of not only thinking about the abstract persona, but going straight into the person, into the people with directed questions. This is amazing to surface this up to, as you said, across the C-suite. That's amazing. That's cool.
It's exciting. I mean, we're on that journey, not fully formed yet, but that's what we are.
No, but this makes the case so much bigger, right? And it's the multi-use of an established technology, and that makes by itself a better ROI.
Yes, and I think that buy-in from the C-suites, and I think if people have actionable things they can action, and I think most leaders get the power of feedback. It just needs to be in the right language. It needs to be actionable, specific enough. And then sort of, I really believe in seeing that they want to action, that want to listen, and they really empower their front line.
Amazing.
So if we can be a small part of that, that makes me a super happy man.
I can understand that is amazing. And I'm not sure if it's a small part. I think you're playing a bigger part there, a good bigger part. Let me go back to one question that I had from the frontline managers. So when you push out the survey, you have clear QR code, and you have a communication strategy of how to make sure every employee understands, hey, please participate.
Yes.
But this is only successful, as you rightly said, if there is an action taking afterwards, and people understand, your employees understand that it was not just I want to see the numbers, but I'm interested in what you are saying, and I will do something with it. And this do something with it is most effective if it is done by their direct managers, right?
Yes.
This is when they see it, this is when they feel it, and this is when it becomes very applicable. How do you make sure that managers are nudged, or whatever you are doing, to make sure managers will review the results and follow up on actions, and not just say like, hey guys, thank you were engaged. We'll make a party to make you all feel better, and then nothing until the next survey. How do you solve that issue?
Well, I think it's a story we've perhaps all heard too often, haven't we? And in terms of, I think it can have a negative impact if you don't genuinely listen, you set an expectation, don't follow through. So there's a range of ways we do it. So, and some of this is a little bit controversial and a little bit like Marmite, and this is why we have our client advisory boards and to really help us to sort of find the right way forward and sort of test ideas. So if I just give two examples to set the scene. With event-driven lifecycle services, say I've spoken about onboarding before, and we know for our client base with deskless workers, a large portion of their colleagues tend to leave in the first 3 months. And if they can get them past 6 months, or stay for 2 years, past 2 years, they could be here for 10 years.
Okay.
So it's such an important bit, that initial onboarding experience. But we know lots of the feedback has to be actioned really quickly, particularly if I've joined.
Yeah.
And there's been an issue with my shift patterns, or I've had the wrong equipment, my tech's not working, or I've had the wrong uniform or the wrong size. The longer that goes on for, the more that diminishes the employee experience. The time is of the essence. And in most cases, the manager is the person best placed to sort that quite quickly.
Yeah.
And where a lot of platforms historically have sort of aggregated data, it makes it really difficult to act on it because you get an anonymized peer group of maybe 10 people or 5 people. And because a store may not be hiring that sufficient number of people every month, it gets aggregated at the country level. All of a sudden, it's academic.
Yeah.
So one of the things we did with Workbuzz, and this is like Marmite. Some of our clients said, I love it. Some said, whoa, no way. So we made it modular. You can turn on, turn off around that. Is on our onboarding surveys, if a client enables it, we can nudge the employee and give them a choice. Do you consent for your feedback to be shared with your line manager?
Yeah.
If they say no, it doesn't get shared, it gets sort of rolled up and anonymized. If they do consent, and most of the feedback's quite practical, so that it's sort of not really asking at that point, do I trust my line manager, and so on, more on a practical level. If they opt in, that feedback is shared with a line manager pretty close to real time. So I can complete the feedback loop. And we have an annual conference called Workbuzz Live. And we held that last October, and in fact, last November in London. And I had a client come up to me during the break to say literally the week before. And they were skeptical. They didn't initially turn on this feature. They turned it on. And said literally the week before, they had a case of an employee. There were 2 or 3 things that hadn't gone well about their initial experience. Were looking to leave because that feedback was actionable, was able to turn it around, and they'd had that stay conversation, and they're now in a much better place. Whereas if it got rolled at country level, I can't action it. It's too high level. So, and then that makes it all worthwhile. There's that one example around that. So that's one thing we do with some of our event-driven sort of life cycle surveys. What we do for more of our company-wide surveys, if you talk about poll surveys or more traditional surveys, is we have created our own action plan. So we're on the 2nd generation now. And the way we designed that is we had some of our client advisory boards, and that visited our office, and we created a menu. And on this menu, we created 13, 14 different things we could build. And we asked them, what are the sort of, in order, if you're going to rank the stuff on the menu? And we showed some mock-ups and interactive demos. And they really shaped what was most important to them. So we have built a tool called Workbuzz Acts. And off the back of a survey, we use some of our algorithms where we look at what factors drive engagement most in your team. We look at the size of potential opportunity versus some of our external benchmarks, internal benchmarks too. We've got a project looking at integrating large language models at the moment to look at how we sort of bring in free text into those algorithms too. And what that does for each manager, it picks up areas to celebrate. That's really important too, to sort of to have that as human beings. If all we're getting is negative constructive feedback, we switch off. So it has to be balanced too. And then we pull out the top 3 areas our algorithm suggests to focus on. And that makes it much more scientific. And then we've curated a library of content with some bite-sized suggested actions that are optimized for mobiles. Are playing English for our English-speaking clients on that. And then clients can upload their own content too. And then that creates a system to empower the business to act on their feedback. Our HR stakeholders can see what majority of managers are focusing on, and almost bottom-up leadership can then align their business plan to what line managers are saying is going to move the needle most for their parts of the business too. So we've had a team on that for the last 9 months, really shaping that, and we're really pleased in terms of what we created. But because of the way technology is evolving with AI too, there's a whole new set of possibilities.
And talking about this, Stephen, in a bit more detail, right? What is your strategy around AI and Gen AI? This is a topic where I think anyone in technology is asked for. Like, how do you feel about this? Is it ready for use in the topics that you are driving? How are you maybe already using AI versus generative AI at a later stage? What's your strategy on that?
So I think it's worth remembering AI isn't new. It's been around for a long time, and actually, just down the road from our office, we have Bletchley Park, where they sort of decoded the sort of Enigma machines, and they had an AI summit here a while back. But they have, I visited once, and they have lots of professors and mathematicians that were already sort of decade or generations ago already experimenting here. And we started using machine learning almost since the inception of Workbuzz to really solve challenges if you're a client and there's rich insight in free text comments, and that's easy to action. If I'm a frontline manager and I've got 10 employees or 20 employees, I haven't got much to digest and read. And I had some examples of CEOs that some of our smaller clients print off hundreds of go through highlights of picking out comments. That's not ideal. It doesn't scale. So
it does. It just kills 100 trees or so.
It kills 100 trees, eats at the time, bad for the environment, bad for time, all out. And also, you miss stuff. It doesn't matter how smart you are. If you're going to go for 100 pages and stuff, you can't feel that sort of is suboptimal. But that's a reflection of where I think employee listening was a decade ago. So what we did when we first started, we hired an army of independent HR freelancers, and we shared with them hundreds of thousands of comments in our surveys. And said, code them, tag comments to different themes, whether it's about empowerment, rewarding recognition, and so on, and then group them by sentiment. And the technology, if you're going back 3 to 4 years, was okay, but not great. So when we looked initially at some of the off-the-shelf technology platforms that sort of had text analytics sort of things built in, but not optimized for employee feedback, you tend to get accuracy rates of 55-60%, not good enough. So that's why we built something, because we trained our own model on that. That took a big investment, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of comments.
It's amazing. That's amazing.
But actually still not great in terms of, and as technology has evolved, particularly OpenAI spearheading that, what that creates is a huge opportunity to leverage some of those large language models that could be trained on billions of pieces of data, not hundreds of thousands, whether OpenAI or others out there. So we have a project at the moment where we are just integrating with some of those large language models to split test the impact on accuracy and see, can we dynamically theme comments too. So if you, one of the limitations of our current sort of setup is the themes we have are quite generic. Whereas if I'm a healthcare business, there'll be some really sensitive stuff around patient safeguarding. If I'm manufacturing, health and safety. If I'm a retail business, it could be a bigger focus on customer experience and barriers to that. So we want to look at, can we dynamically theme that for a client level without having to a client manually sort of go for 100 themes or a schema and sort of just create sort of friction around that? Can we do it in a much more intelligent way? And ultimately, how do you leverage the power of free text to really drive action on at scale? And that's what I think some of the large language models have opened up now. There's just a step change, leg of accuracy around that. And then how you summarize, how can you create summaries of free text? How can you nudge managers to sort of draft snippets of action plans? Then can you tailor it to their own tone of voice? So I think we're just seeing sort of the beginnings of that impact to generative AI, but it's something which we are using here already in beta formats, and some of our clients are piloting. I think it's just the start.
Fantastic.
Very exciting.
Sounds really like this. Fantastic. Amazing, Steve. Now, in 4 years, you turn 10. Where would you like to be? What is your aspiration when you think about the next years? What is the next step for you, and what is the wider aspiration? When would you say in 10 years, not at 10 years, or at 10 years, why would you say we are in a great position? We're exactly where I wanted to be.
So I think sort of, so we turned 10, which sounds old. So Workbuzz will be 10 years old in October 2028. That seems flying cars should be here by then, shouldn't it? So the 4 years.
They still promise the autonomous car is ready in the next 5 years, and they continue to say in 5
Every
years.
5 years, sort of, around it is one of those sort of moving targets, isn't it? I think, but 4.5 years, 4.5 years is a long time, particularly if you think about sort of the conversation around generative AI.
Yeah,
were academic or theoretical sort of 4.5 years ago. I think for me and the team, we want to create something we're proud of. I think in terms of life is too short to not enjoy work, not to feel like you're making a difference.
Yeah.
So our vision is to help impact and improve the work and lives of 1 million people. We're getting closer towards that. If we've got a client with 200 headcount, 20,000, and they're measurably more engaged, that's how we sort of calculate progress towards our vision. And I talked to the team about creating something career defining, where in 20 years' time, we will be looking back at this stage of our careers where we were challenged the most. You see the next peak of the mountain, the next challenge to solve for our clients, not quite sure how to get there, but look at how far we've come. And you have that belief where the bit we've grown the most, developed the most, and had the most fun as well. Yeah. And that's sort of really something career defining, where we created something we're really proud of. We think made a big difference and really special. And for us, it's sort of first and foremost, that is trying to create the world's best employee listening platform for deskless frontline workers. If we can achieve that, we will. Well, I don't know if we'll ever achieve that. I think so that you'll always have aspirational goals.
Exactly. And the question is this actually a finite game, or is it an infinite game? Right? Is it like you're getting better every day because you learn more and more, and there is no I'm the best now, we are done, we are finished, right? Because the work environment is changing significantly, technology is changing, but also people are changing. So maybe, it is an incremental step every day.
Yeah, and I think this is, I don't think it's necessarily linear because the context changes.
Yeah.
So I think if everything stood still, you could say actually, you have linear bits of regression. We want to improve our accuracy using AI of analyzed free text from 80% to 99%. It's linear. But actually the world changes, we change. Sort of, I saw an advert from Mercedes about integrating AI robots, humanoids into their production line. You've got Tesla with Optimus doing similar stuff too. You've got drones, you've got shifting employee expectations. Yeah. So I think there are some key themes that will remain constant. The best companies believe their sustainable competitive advantage is their culture and their talent. We've got generational talent shortages in Western Europe and North America that aren't going away with an aging population. No. You've got some very clever people, much cleverer than I, talking about some of the biggest risks 100 years out are declining populations, and you begin to see that in sort of, if you take out net immigration, you begin to see that in places like the UK, and that's sort of fueling the grave. Look at places like Japan too. Yeah, you've got technology changes that there's been many famous quotes around the best inventions were all made in the 19th century, and the internet and all the spur of innovation we've seen over the last sort of 20, 30 years. We're just on the cusp of that with generative AI now. So I think what makes it really exciting is, as human beings and employees, we change, our expectations change, what's around us changes, technology changes, and around that too. So I could easily foresee in a generation time, you're having challenges of how do you integrate robots and humanoids onto your production line, and what does that work like, and extra things that creates that we can't foresee yet. So that's what I think makes it exciting. But I think what remains constant is people are your sustainable competitive advantage in terms of your culture. The best employees, the ones that value their employees and lean in and view them as a source of ideas. And if Workbuzz, if we can just be part of that, that's a super exciting sort of journey to be part of.
Steve, I think these are so powerful words. It feels like we need to finish the conversation, because these are so powerful words. They are really great to close it out. But it is as you say. Also for me, people are and culture. These are the competitive advantages that no one can imitate. You can only have it in your firm the way you have it. Understanding this better and making an impact there. This is really amazing. So, Steve, thank you so much for your time. This has been an amazing conversation, and Workbuzz is an amazing product. I think this is really something that I'm looking forward to see growing and continue to watch. So thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it and love your podcast and just the breadth of thought leadership on there. So thank you very much for having me, Volker.
No, thank you, Steve. It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Speak soon.